Buying your first home in Canada in 2024 is so confusing. There's so many different rules, there's different markets, different types of homes, and then that can really kind of distract the buyer or you ultimately kind of why you're ultimately trying to buy a home, right? Because there's so many shiny things, right? Like shiny object syndrome. So the reason why we buy these homes is for our personal use. And like I've said many times before, everybody's personal needs are different. But when I talk to a lot of clients and people who kind of like book calls with me, potential clients, they always ask me about two things and try to get my insight on those two things because I can't really advise them on that many personal use things, right? And that is the price of a home and the interest rates and how the two of them affect one another. And at the end of the day, how and what they're going to buy, right? This is why I want to dedicate a video just on this topic and like really get down to the nitty gritty numbers of kind of how the two of them are related so that you could make a good decision. So make sure you stay tuned. Now, our team has helped, and I counted actually over the summer break, almost 100 first-time home buyers. And I would say we kind of have a pretty good understanding of like the hard decisions that, need to be made, right? Because there are going to be compromises, there's going to be confusion, and most importantly, there's going to be a lot of fear that you're making a huge mistake because it's going to be like a really large, purchase in your life, right? And I've been there and I get it, and we can guide you with those like decisions, right? Because at the end of the day, if you want to work with us, our job is that we want to be your tour guide and get you to where you want to be, i.e., the final destination, and want to get you there as fast as possible with as little bumps and bruises as possible. Because poo-poo happens, right? And sometimes I have to say, I think like maybe more than 50, that's just like anecdotally speaking, that destination changes because there's so many things that our clients may not even know they don't know yet, right? So if you do want to discuss with me kind of what, you're thinking about right now for buying your first home in this current market, you can do so by booking a call with me using the link that's on the screen. It's right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Simply click on the date and the time that works best for you. And then when you see the prompt, fill in your name, email, mobile phone number, and the question you have for me, and then we'll chat then. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode of Prime Properties TV. My name is Zen, and if you're enjoying the content I'm putting out there, do me a favor and like and subscribe so I can put more content like this into the YouTube worlds. So over the next few weeks, I have planned right now, I'm going to be dedicating one video each week to help the first-time homebuyer over the next few weeks, like I was saying, so that they can navigate, the Canadian or GTA space through buying their first home, right? So some of these topics I have right now, and I'm not married to them. And if you have any, ideas you want me to talk about, you can put them in the comment section below. But I'll be covering stuff like qualifying for the mortgage, the right mortgage, and understanding, what to do. Some of all the perks for first-time home buyers, which now is like a really big laundry list. So we got first-time home savings account, FHSA. You got the home buyers plan, HBP. You also got the CMHC plan, which is a less than 20% down. You also have the land transfer tax. There's a whole bunch of stuff, right? So we'll be covering all of that stuff. And the reason I'm doing this is that it hasn't been like this great of a time to be a first-time home buyer since I've been licensed as like a realtor in the Greater Toronto area, which by the way now is like over a decade. I do feel like a dinosaur in our industry right now, even though I'm not that old. So while I don't, know when the proverbial perfect time is to be buying, what I can say is that for your market and your unique situation, if you want to chat about it, what I can tell you is this. I haven't seen the buyers in this much power, like leverage in the market when negotiating ever. As a first-time home buyer, right now, you can have conditions. Wow, right? Which is like a godsend for buying your first home because if you think about it, this is a huge purchase in your life with lots of financial consequences if you make the wrong one. So having conditions to do your due diligence is great. Second thing is you generally don't have to compete right now, right? There are tons to choose from. We don't have to like scramble to go see a property because it's going to sell in a week and you have to like take a day off or like bail out on a meeting, right? Which actually was a thing, right? You see, These are all the things that I haven't seen in a very long time that are in your favor. And while like, a lot of people will try to time it, what I can say is that when you're kind of going through the motions of like, buying the first property, it isn't an instant decision where it's like, bam, I got the timing of it, because you still have to find the right property and do a lot of the due diligence, and it could take weeks. And our process and our sales cycles really just depends on like how thorough we are and what you're looking for and how much stuff is there, right? And on top of all of that, it's very obvious right now the rate cutting direction is down, meaning rates are going to come down, right? So, you can say the bottom is in to an extent, right? So if you are contemplating that, how to get started with your first home, you can do so by book a call with me using the link that's on the screen right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. And the reason why I have all this, like, call it pre-ramble, is so that you understand where I'm coming from and what I'm seeing right now. And look, it's not going to be for everybody, but it is for most people from the data I can see, right? Okay, so home prices, interest rates. The general consensus you hear, like a lot of like other realtors, or like what I would call real estate hobbyists, right? It's just what I call them, okay? Would be that, when rates come down, prices go up, right? And I can tell you that that's not always true, but it's not always false either, right? There is like that fine line that's kind of nuanced, as a topic, it's very difficult to say, and hence why I have this video. The challenge with having like a blanket statement of like saying, rates down, prices up, it's that there's a large assumption of a grand magnitude that you're assuming things are binary, either like, 1 or 0. They're not. There's a very gray band in between. And one of the gray bands in between is that inventory has a huge factor in this equation, specifically when we're, talking about a home that you ultimately want to live in for, call it like 5 to 10 years, whatever the number is, right? And those, like, call it 8 out of 10s of the properties are still here, and they're still rare to come by, which is why I keep saying, like, everyone's situation is different depending on their financial needs, or what their financial situation is, what their personal needs are, and kind of like ultimately what they're trying to buy in what area, right? But what I wanted to hone down in on this video is actually your total payment, meaning ultimately what you pay for that home, interest rates and principal included, right? Because a lot of people only focus on the price or what their monthly payment is of that home. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess it depends how you look at it. Unfortunately, in today's world, we're all too focused on that monthly cost. It's kind of like going to buy a new car. You go finance a new car. You don't really care what that price of the car is, but at the end of the day, you tell the guy or the sales guy and be like, hey, this is what I want my monthly payment to be. And as long as it hits that, I'll buy it. That's the wrong way to approach it, right? And this is why I want to show you the total cost of buying your first home, so you really understand, the monthly payment, which is dictated by the interest rates. Most people know that. And it isn't as important as the price you pay, because that's more important. Now, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. You want to date the rate, meaning, promiscuous, and marry the price. Right? So let's look at 3 scenarios I kind of highlight to illustrate this example for you. And then we're going to go really deep in the hypothetical world of why you should be dating the rate and marrying the price. So scenario number 1, our purchase price of $600,000 at the current interest rates of 4.5%. I just use this right now because that's roughly a first-time home buyer, right? Scenario 2, right? Our first purchase is at $625,000 because rates came down a little bit, call it, right? The prices went up a little bit and the rates are down to 4.25. And scenario 3, we're at 650 and say the rates are at 4%. Generally as a, example, right? I'm not saying it's going to happen like that, but as an example. And you can see in those scenarios, the monthly payment actually gets higher, like marginally, as the rate goes lower, but the prices are higher. Like about $25 a month difference between scenario 1 to 2, and then another 25 from scenario 2 to 3. While that is a small amount, obviously the perfect scenario that everyone's thinking right now is that, hey, why don't I buy with scenario 1 prices and close with scenario 3 rates? So a $600,000 purchase price and a 4% rate. Hence why everyone is trying to time the bottom. How can I get that magical, scenario 1 mixed with scenario 3? However, this is what I'm going to say about this, right? And a lot of people forget this. Depending on the direction the rates are heading, most first-time home buyers I work with, like most, right, usually forget that they can renegotiate their rate like 2 to 3 weeks up before closing if the rate is lower than what they were approved / qualified for, before they start shopping. And in our scenario where the rates are going down, that's likely going to be the case, right? So hence the possibility for a $600,000 purchase, again, in my example, and a 4% rate is possible. Where a lot of people run into hiccups on timing the market is that they wait and wait and wait until the sentiment is fully swapped, where it is bullish. And when things get more competitive, which they're not right now, you have to remove conditions. Prices are likely going up pretty fast because we're running out of inventory, and rates may or may not be going down in that or going in the direction you want it to, right? Because we could have hit that, sentiment bottom. That is inherently the problem with the groupthink in real estate when you only read the headlines. You'll be too late. Now, I'm going to give you some math, so bear with me. I'm not changing topics, but here's the chart for the total amount of money you'll be paying for the property, okay? Again, this is all in like a hypothetical scenario because it's very unlikely this is going to happen, but it's just to illustrate a point. You can see that the lowest price, even though the rate is ultimately higher, results in the lowest total payment for the home, so the interest and the principal. It may not be obvious to some, but you can see that a higher rate and a lower price in the end wins and beats out the higher price and the lower rate, which is the direction we're heading into right now. However, you will notice that the interest paid is actually less on the lower interest rate, which also some people don't know. And that's because the rate is lower in those situations you're paying less interest. And why you ultimately pay more as a total sum in that scenario is that you have more principal to pay off, because in scenario 1, your principal is $480,000. In scenario 2, it's $500,000, and 3, it's $520,000. So effectively, you're paying these amounts over a larger time, even though your rate is lower, and the person you bought it from already pocketed the money like 25, 30 years ago. But of course, in Canada, you have to understand that this is all hypothetical, and this doesn't exist because we don't have 30-year mortgages like the US. So our mortgages are actually renewing every 3 to 5 years or so. There are 10-year products out there, okay? But this is the important part that most people misunderstand about our world right now. And let me explain. Most of my clients who are closing on properties right now are getting a 3-year fixed. This was like a few months ago. Could be a little bit different now. That was around 4.5%, okay? So when you renew, these are the numbers you're looking at if rates stabilize, right? So I just went, let's say 3.25 because that's like the 10-year norm, right? For like mortgage rates. You can see the difference in your monthly payment effectively doubles instead of being less than that, right? And this is because in an amortization schedule, fancy term for like your debt, you pay more interest in principal, you mainly pay interest off in the beginning first of like your term. So you're paying down the principal takes more time towards the end of the amortization, right? So towards the end of your amortization, it's mostly principal, as you can see in this chart over here. And in the beginning, it's mostly interest. So the blue is how much interest you pay, and the green is how much principal you pay. And you can see that kind of swaps towards the end of it. The thing is, your rate will be different after 3 to 5 years, right? And you can see the yellow is kind of like your balance going down depending on your 25 or 30-year amortization period. So you really don't reap the benefits of lower interest rates in the beginning as much as you would if you were to get a lower price. Do you see what I'm trying to get at, right? Because you're just keeping that principal very high as you renew for the first time. Because the lower price means you have a lower amount of debt to pay off, which ultimately means that you pay less for the home. It sounds very obvious as the way I'm saying it right now, but it's not so obvious when I talk to a lot of people who only focus on monthly payment, right? So you have to understand all of that. Now, this is assuming you live there for 25 or 30 years, which for Torontonians isn't usually the case. It's just like the first rung on their real estate ladder before they move up to the next property, the next property, next property, unless you're blessed to have high income or money passed down. So you can see why, notion of, date the rate and marry the price is so important. And this is why I think a lot of people are waiting for that signal of the rate cuts, right? Because those first-time home buyers who are like understanding that the direction of the rates are going right now, I would say are kind of coming back. And just from talking to my colleagues, there's more of them, right? Again, at least that's from like what I can see and what when I talk to other people and the calls that, you know, are being booked on my kind of platform. And they realize that rates are only improving right now for them, but what they can't control are prices in the area that they're looking for, right? You see that? And this is why we've had a lot of first-time home buyers right now kind of start looking again. Like we've had a lot that put, you know, a pause on like in mid 2022, but a lot of them have come back out of the woodworks and kind of just like sniffing around, looking around, right? Sorry if you guys are watching. So some of you who are good with numbers understand this and are starting their search and looking at the prices right now, aiming to buy by like the end of 2024 and close with better rates in say like late 2024 or like early 2025. Hence you can get that scenario of buying at 600 and dating the rate at 4%, you know, getting to what I talked about. So I hope this gives you like a better understanding of like the relationship between like home prices and interest rates from like a more nerdy mathematical thing. And yes, maybe your monthly payment's a little bit higher right now if you have a, you know, higher rate, but ultimately the lower price point is what you should be, you know, striving for. And honestly, I really wish it wasn't so convoluted and confusing, but ultimately this is how our system is like set up, you know, like the debt system and the real estate system. It's just set up in this manner. So you have to understand how some of this math works. So if you do want to work with me regarding like buying your first home right now, and you just kind of want to, you know, just see and understand maybe like what your situation looks like right now from your personal stance and kind of like the market you're trying to target, or, you know, maybe I just did a horrible job explaining this video, but like you kind of are grasping the points. You can just book a call with me using a link that's on the screen right here to further our chat. And, you know, you can just let me know that, you know, this is what kind of triggered you booking a call, and we can continue the conversation from there. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what's happening, and make sure to stay tuned because I will have more first-time homebuyer content in the next few weeks coming up. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya! Now that you're done watching this one, how about this one or this one? You know what? Just watch them both.